All right, we are going to try something here because I find this so damn interesting. I just have I have to talk about it. It's one of those sneaky things about American sports that I feel like nobody else really knows about, and it happens to be taking over the American sports conversation for a little while, and I just wanted to point out how cool it is. But I am going to warn you, we're talking about football, but not like what I normally mean when I say football. We're talking about football. But don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to explain the rules back to me at the end of this video. It's just something so damn cool I have to talk about it. So in the United States, we have college football, right? This is something that baffles the rest of the world, right? It is utterly mind-blowing. Nobody has any idea what college football is or why it's so important. But what I can tell you as a fact is the largest sports stadiums built in the United States are for university American football. There are 10 of them that seat over 100,000 people, right? And they host 7 home games a year. It is a huge deal, a really significant factor in deciding where you go to college in the United States. If you ask the average high school student, is game days, football. How's their football team? Would you be able to hang out and watch their football team and celebrate their football team? Some are basketball schools because college basketball is also a huge deal in the United States, but American college football is crazy. And there are over 130 that are at the top level. There's no promotion and relegation. It's just about how much money you want to invest in the sport that you can kind of move up these levels. And the very top level has about 130 teams. But there are 3 teams that are unusual. They are very, very, very unusual. They are 3 branches of the armed forces. I realize that might just be the most American thing you've ever heard. The idea of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force playing American football in college. Like, that's just, you just expect bald eagles to go flying across the field, dropping leaflets with a picture of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln on them. And sometimes, that does happen. I mean, this is America, for crying out loud. What else do you think we do? But yes, West Point, which is the Army Academy, the Naval Academy in Annapolis, and the Air Force Academy, which is over in Colorado, they are universities, right? That's where the officers of all 3 of those branches of the military are trained. The U.S., in case you hadn't noticed, in any point in any of your history classes, is a little into the whole military thing. And so these are large universities. They are very, very good universities. They're actually quite hard to get into. And let's say you're reading a history book and you're talking about a great commander in U.S. history, they all went to West Point. If it's an admiral, they all went to Annapolis. And if it's somebody that's in charge of the Air Force, because I forgot the word for those people, they all went to the Air Force Academy, right? That's where these places went. And they have football teams. Not only do they have football teams, they compete in the top level of American college football. So that group of 130 teams that includes all the big state schools, Alabama, Georgia, Virginia, where I went, Washington, Ohio State, Florida State, right? Like all of these big colleges that have big, 100,000 seat stadiums and whatever, competing in the same tier as Army, Navy, and Air Force. But something really, really insane is happening this year. Army and Navy are both unbeaten at the same time. And I realize this sounds like I'm making a history joke here, but this is the first time that's happened since World War II. Literally, the last time this happened. I don't know how there were any people left in these academies during World War II, because all of the men were gone. But in 1943, I think it was, Navy and Army were both 5-0, right? And they are dominating. Here is Navy's schedule so far this season. Okay, well, I got to make sure I don't go back to last year, all right? They've played 5 games. They beat Bucknell 49-21. Bucknell sucks. They beat Temple 38-11. They beat Memphis 56-44. Now, Memphis is a really good team. I mentioned Florida State earlier. Memphis beat Florida State. So that's a really legit win. They beat UAB, which is the University of Alabama, Birmingham, 41-18. And they beat the Air Force 34-7. They've won every game they've played. And then if you go over to Army's schedule, obviously, you're going to find the same thing. And the reason I'm making this video right now is because as I record it, Army is beating that same University of Alabama Birmingham team 41-3. They're smoking them. They beat Tulsa out of Oklahoma 49-7. They beat Temple 42-14. They beat Rice 37-14. They beat Florida Atlantic 24-7, and they beat Lehigh 42-7. They're killing teams. Even if you don't understand how scoring works in American football, that's the most you can get on one possession is 8 points. Okay, they're winning by a lot. They are destroying these teams. And in American college football, there is a 12-team playoff at the end of the season. It's the first year that exists. It used to just be 4 teams, but they expanded it because there's a lot more teams trying to make it, and obviously we love a good playoff. Army, Navy, or Air Force has never made it. And if either of these teams go undefeated, they will go. They 100% will go to the college football playoff for the first time. But if you ever wanted to get into American football, and if you don't, that's perfectly fine. This is just an interesting story either way. There is the potential for true madness because one of the most famous games, one of the most watched American football games on TV every year is the Army-Navy game, right? It's just like full-blown America. The president goes every year, right? You've got your cadets and the midship, like you've got the cadets from both schools that kind of are on either side. The Air Force, I guess, just got to feel left out in this, but Army and Navy have their own week. The whole season ends, and then there's one extra week of the season where just Army and Navy play, and it's right there. Now, what I want you to imagine for a second, right, is those two teams rolling into that game undefeated. And it's the only game on TV on Saturday. The only one. And it's the Army-Navy game. And I'm not even kidding. Even when these two teams suck, and they suck a lot, because it is kind of unfair. I mean, a lot of these other schools, they recruit all the guys that they have. They pay them a lot of money because you can pay, like you have what are called NIL collectives. It's name, image, and likeness, but it's basically rich people that like a certain school pooling their money together to pay players to come to their school. Well, if you go to Army and Navy, you can't go straight to the NFL, right? If you go to Army and Navy, you have to serve in those branches for, I can't remember, it's like 3 to 5 years. If you are a huge NFL prospect, you can ask for a deferment, but you still have to serve. You can't go to these schools and then not serve. Right. And so that is obviously a huge challenge when it comes to recruiting players that either just don't want to serve in the military or want to go on to the NFL, which is obviously a lot of players that are playing at the top level of college football have that dream at least, and committing to go to Navy or Army or Air Force is going to rob you of that opportunity unless you are able to get a waiver that is literally signed by the president, I think is the only way that you can defer your service. And it's happened with 1 or 2 guys. And there's a quarterback for Navy that turned into a running back and played in the NFL for a few years. And then he ended up going on and serving because he ended up not being that good because these teams normally suck. But there is a kind of once in a lifetime sports story brewing right now. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew about it. Because Army is once again blowing the doors off of a team that is spending, a lot of money on recruiting its players and can send its players to the NFL and UAB, and they're destroying them anyways. I don't know where Army and Navy have gotten the players to be able to do this, but they're unreal. They're rolling these guys like Germany in 1945, and they're going to keep on rolling until they both play a team called Notre Dame, which is a traditional old powerhouse. And Notre Dame is basically the one team on these two teams' schedule that they are going to be underdogs against for the rest of the season. And if one of them can beat Notre Dame, Army and Navy might have a top 10 football team in the country, which is unconscionable, right? This is like a team from League One potentially going on to win the FA Cup, and the run has already started. You know what I mean? Like they're already on the run, right? This is Leicester trying to win the Premier League here. And we're midway through the season, and they're top of the table, right? And they're up there in the conversation, making a lot of noise, except it's the armed forces schools, and it's both of them at the same time. If you're wondering, Air Force sucks this year, which just got dirt in the wound, right? You're watching the other two armed forces schools take off, and you're the Air Force for crying out loud, and you're grounded. I actually did a pretty good job with that joke. I totally thought I was going to mess that up. Even if you don't give a hoot about American football or college football, this is just one of those weird quirks or if you didn't think college football was weird already, in the fact that universities have these huge teams that everybody pays attention to, I'm going to spend all day today watching college football. I freaking love college football, right? The armed forces have teams too. And not only do they have teams, those teams are really good this year. In that game on December 14th, the Army-Navy game, which I tune into it a little bit every year. It's fun. It's going down. It's going down. It's going to be the best Army-Navy game in like 85 years. And I can't wait. And I'm glad you know about it now.